Let's use Wpf to create a new Wpf application in C#. Now, I'm using Visual Studio 2013, but you can be using Visual Studio 2012 or maybe a later version. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file, new project, and my new project, make sure I've got Visual C#. I'm going to look under Windows, and under Windows there's the Wpf application. I'm going to change the name of it and call it new example, and make sure I know where it's being saved at. So I could browse to a different location to save it, but for now I'm going to leave it here in my projects folder. Create a directory for the solution. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Name of the solution file will be the name that I gave it, so I'm going to leave that the same. Click OK, and it will take off and start building some stuff for us. And man, this is difficult to see. By the way, if your windows don't look like this, and again, I'm using Visual Studio 2013, so depending on what version you're using, it's going to look different. But so far in all of them, we've been able to go to Windows and then reset the Windows layout. You sure you want to do that? Yeah. And this is the way the default look for it. Okay, but over here I'm going to find Toolbox, and if it's not there, you can go to View and open your Toolbox down here, but mine's already there, so I'm going to go to Toolbox, and I'm going to pin this down for now. Okay, here's my design window. Here's my code. You notice that here's my grid, and if you've ever done HTML or XML, this will be recognizable to you. And these elements or tags can describe a lot for us on how things are going to look. And in fact, XML, that's what it does, is it describes what things are going to look like. And in this case, it's describing a grid. And you notice there's nothing between these two elements. This is the beginning element, this is the ending element. Sorry if this is small and difficult to see. And in between there's nothing right now. So let's go ahead and put something in our grid. And the first thing that we can do, and we can do this, we can do this with code, but why do it with code if you can do it visually and it's a little easier to see. But I'm going to go in here and can I unpin this for now, and maybe it's easier to see it, but okay. And I can put in another row. Let me move the row up here and click on that, and it put in another row. Row definitions tells me the height of this row. And let me see if I can scroll down. And rows again go across. Columns go up and down. So this goes across, so it's a row. So this is a container, and I can drag these tools, these controls, into this container. And this container is a way of organizing the controls on your form. So right now we have two rows, one row going across here and another row going across here. Let's put in a column. Get the little triangle, move it where I want to. I bet if we, and just put it here. Okay. So we put it in a column. You notice it pops up on our code down here. Okay, now that we've got that, let me get our toolbox back. Put this up here, nail it down. We've got common WPF controls and all of the WPF controls. I'm with the common ones. I'm not going to do anything unusual for now. So I'm going to drag a I'm going to drag a button on. I know this is small. And I'm also going to drag a text block on here. Let's put the text block up here. And we can snap to the grid if we want to keep these aligned. Okay, I've got the button control. You notice I've got that highlighted, so I look over here and here's my properties over here on the right hand side, and I can change. The first thing I want to do is give it a name that has no name when it first pops up, and this is going to be different again depending on which version of Visual C# or Visual Studio you have. But let me give my control a name. It's a button, BTN, and let's call it Click Me. I can change the appearance of this if I want to, and more for now I can change the content. Content is what it's going to say, and I'm going to have it say Click Me. Press the enter key. I don't know if you can see that, but it changed it to say Click Me. Now I can change a lot of things on here. I can change the color of this. I can change the size of the font. I can change a lot of things. The lines surrounding this box, also known as a button. I can do a lot of things in changing this. For now, I'm just going to keep it simple. Now, text block, same thing. Let me give it a more descriptive name, so it's TXTB for text block, and text block's display. And on the name, you do not want to use spaces in there. And you do not want to start off with numbers or special characters, even though later you may want to, but for now let's keep a naming convention which is easy to remember and easy to identify. Okay, what do you want the text display? In this one, what is the text block going to say? Change my text. Press the enter key and that's what it says. Okay. So let's go to the coding for the button. The button right now is where most of your coding is going to be. You notice in your reading, you notice that when you're first starting and you're doing some sort of GUI design, the button is where most of our coding is going to go for now. Later that will change, but for now, let's put our coding into the button. So I want to go into the coding for the button. And I'm going to double click this. And what it does, I double click the visual button and it created for me some code. And it says, remember I named this one BTN Click Me? It says, when you click BTN, do what's ever between these curly braces. And in this case I'm going to do something simple, which is, what was the name of our text box? We called it TXT, there it is, display. I want to change the text property of that. There it is. And I'm going to assign to it some text. And I'll just have it say hello world. On the end of that I want to put a semicolon because we're doing C#, and now I'm going to run this. I'm going to say debug, start debugging, and let's see if this runs. And it takes off and builds that, and there's, you notice the lines with the container, defining the containers, don't show up on here. It does in the design form. Let me see if I can, while I'm debugging, can I switch over? Yeah. Let me get this back. You know, it's in our design form, we see all these different lines in here. When we run it, we don't see these lines unless we explicitly tell it to in the code. But for now, we've just got a button and a text box, or text display. And let's do this. When I click, now let me go back to the coding. Go back to the coding window. Go back to the coding window and let me drag this back in so you can see what's going on here. You notice that again, this says when you click the control that we call button click me, which is this control here, here's what I want you to do. I want you to do whatever is between these curly braces. Right now we've only got one statement, and this says take the text box, text block, and this is the text block up here, and change the text property. And this is not an equal sign, it's an assignment character. And take this string, and it's a string because it's in double quotes, take this string and enter it into the text of the text block. In other words, it should say hello world here when I click this button. So click the button, take hello world, display it on the text of the text block. Okay, let's go ahead and run it and see if it does that. So I'm going to click this, and it takes the text from the text block and displays hello world on there. Okay, so that's what I wanted it to do. So let's do something a little more involved. Let's create an integer data type. We'll call it int test. Has to be a legal valid name again, no spaces, and a valid variable name, and let's just define it here, and then on the next line we'll say integer. There it is, and we're going to assign a value to it on this line. You can do it all in one line, and let's say 54. And on here, what I can do is I can say, this all fit. Let me unplug this. Okay, hello world, and then I want to display integer test, but I don't want to in this text box, this text display, it only wants string characters. So hello world is okay, it's a string, it's in double quotes, but int test is an integer, it's a number. So how do I change it to a string? I can say change this, and here it is down here, to a string. Yeah, it's a method, so I want to put the braces on the end. Sorry, not the braces, but the parentheses on the end. So I changed it to a string. Now, it's complaining here because it says, I think you ended the name of this statement, but here I've got hello world as a string, and then right next to it I've got something else. Well, what you need to do is join these together, and one of the ways that you do this is by using a plus symbol, and the plus symbol says join these two things together so that they're all one string. So it should print out hello world. Let me put a space after this and maybe an equal sign, and after that display whatever the value is stored in integer test, convert it to a string, and then stuff it into the display of the text block. So I'm going to go ahead and save all and run this and debug, start debugging, and when it pops up, what it should do is that when I run click me, move this up just a little bit more. When I click on the button click me, It's going to create this variable, it's going to assign a value to it, and then it's going to display this concatenated text into the text box. Well, let's see if it does that. Okay, hello world equal, and then this value, which was 54. Okay, that's really a basic way of starting your Wpf file. And from here we'll get a little more complicated, but that's all for now. Oh, tell you what, let's go ahead and take a look at, since I'm done with this, I could go ahead and save it. Make sure I save all, and then I'm going to go into Windows and track down this project, and it should be with a name. Oops, can you see this? Should be with the name WPF new example. So let me go into Windows. I'm using Windows and not a Mac. So let me go track this down. So it was under projects, and what do we call it? WPF new example. That's it. Let me drill down in here and make sure, yeah, this looks like what it's supposed to look like. Alright, looks like we probably have everything there that we need, so I'm going to back up, and now that I've got this, I can right click on this, and again, this is using Windows depending on which OS you're using. I'm going to right click on this and send to compressed zip folder, and there, I've got it all zipped up and ready to go. Okay, I'm going to end it there. I'm going to use Visual Studio 2013, and I'm going to make a C# Wpf app. So, starting with File, New Project, I'm going to make sure that it's a Visual C#. Click on Windows, and then there's my WPF. I don't want to go with the default name. With this one, how about if I just go with and make sure that I know where it's being saved at, so that I can go zip it up later. Okay, so I'm going to leave it in the projects folder, and I'm going to click OK. Now, I'm not sure you can see this. It's by default a little difficult to see, but let's go ahead and try it out. So one of the things I want to do is I want to bring the toolbox up, and I'll pin that down for now. And I have my window here, and with my window I can make changes to that. You notice right now I have the grid. This little slash in front of the grid means that it's the end of the grid. So here's the entire grid. Right now it's, you notice that it's empty. As we go along, we'll start adding things to this grid. And for now, how about if we, let's see what we can do. Change the name, GRD for grid. Okay. We can change the appearance if we want to. There's a lot of different things that we can change on here. But for now, we go in and make some changes. Let's scoot this over just a bit. Oops, wrong one. And Okay, and let's see. Now, we can create rows, and rows go across. So I've got this whole triangle here, and I can move this up or down to where I want it to be. And I can put one on the bottom if I want. And columns go up and down. So let's make a small column here. And if I wanted to, I could make another one over there. Okay. Let's add a button. I'm going to go over here. I've got my controls, and I've got all WPF controls, or I can go with the common controls. Common controls are the ones that you commonly used, so won't be as many of those. So let's go grab a button, put it on here. Now once I've got this button selected, I can go over here and look at my properties. First thing I want to do is give this a name, BTN for button, and let's call this button 1. And I guess I could give it the right name, button 1, and I've got that one selected, and I can change the content, in other words what it says. How about if I have it say click me. Now button by itself, press the enter key on that, and I don't know if you can see that, but it says click me. Let's go ahead and run this and start debugging. I could just go and build it to make sure. As you go along in your coding, you can always build and make sure that it's going to compile properly. And succeeded. Let's go ahead and debug, start debugging, and actually run this. And it's got my grid. You won't see the lines for the rows. These are containers which you can use later on to add controls to, but they'll be invisible when you run it. You'll see it in the design mode. Here in the design mode, you notice you can see that, and when it runs you don't see that. Okay, well, let's go ahead and close that. So it's running, working. Let's add a text block, and I'm going to go up here to text block, and let's move it over here. Plunk it in there. I know this is awfully small, and I've got it selected, which means it's the property, it's the text block, and I want to give it a new name, txtb, and we'll call this display for displaying information. Okay. Now that we've got that, let's go put some coding in there. So I'm going to double click the button. When I do, well, let's go ahead and first let's make sure we've got this saved. So I'm going to save all, and now let me get back and click on this and make sure I've got that selected. Then I'll move over here to the coding window, scroll down a bit, and you notice we've got our main window, and this is the starting point where it initializes the components. So we see that we've got that okay. Let's go back here. We can be in the design form, we can be in the XAML form. You notice in our XAML form now we have our button, which has been added, and our text block. Okay, so now that we've got this, got it selected, right click, and don't know if you can see this, but view the code. And this is another way to get there. let's go back and okay. And before, when I clicked on this, and you have to click on it, make sure you click on it the right way. When I double click this, it will generate the code for the button. Now once I've got the code for the button, I can go ahead and put in my actual coding. Let's put in something simple. Now we had a text box on our, remember our text box here? We go and look at it. Remember the name of it was txtb for text box and then display. And you notice there's no spaces in there. Let me go back to the coding window. So it was txt display, and we want the text property. And let's do something simple. Let's just set it equal to hello world. Make sure it's for C#. I need the semicolon in there. Let's go ahead and run this and debug. Start debugging. And when I click this, let's show the code. This says button 1, which is the name of this button. When I click it, go ahead and run whatever is between this opening curly brace and ending curly brace. And the only thing I've got in there is one statement which says assign. This equal sign is not really an equal sign, it's an assign. Go ahead and assign what's on the right side of this equal sign into the text property of the text box called display. And so when I click this button, it's going to execute this code and display hello world in the text property of this text box. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click it and it says hello world. It displays that in the text property of this text block. Okay. That's kind of the basics of this. Now there's a lot more we can do. How about if we do this? Let's put in a variable, integer variable, let's call it integer test, and let's assign a value to it. Integer test, and we're going to assign a value to it 33. Okay, now what we can do is in here, what we can say is integer test to string, and we need to make sure we concatenate those, or in other words join this together. So let's put our plus sign in there. Oops, I can get this back. Now I want put a space in there. Let me show you why. Let's go ahead and debug, start debugging. And here we've got our click me, and it has hello world plus whatever value we assign to it, which is 33. Okay, that'll get us started on really basic XAML, and I will stop there.